Hello and welcome to Dropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And we're talking about Minari today. Did you know anything about Minari?
I've never heard of it.
No, the title the title is a name of water celery, as we call it, although I don't think we really know the plant all that much. It's a Korean plant. And the film is about Koreans in America in 1980. Particularly a Korean mother and father and their two kids who speak English, have American accents, but Korean is the language spoken throughout most of the film. And the film is based on writer-director Lee Isaac Chung's own childhood, which I think you can see in the fact that I would say the childhood of the two kids is really nicely observed.
Beautiful, yeah.
Feels like a real, these are real kids and these are real childhood experiences, I think. So the dad is played by Stephen Yeun, who has to be the best known actor in the whole thing.
Yes.
It's quite a small budget film. It's $2 million it cost. He and his wife move from California to Arkansas, to the Ozarks, I think. They want to start a farm. Well, he wants to start a farm, and the wife isn't too happy about that. And it's these Korean immigrants chasing the American dream, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't even say chasing the American dream, actually. It's these Korean immigrants making a different life for themselves in another country. And the film is full of little observations that, like, I related to. I mean, I'm an immigrant kid, so kind of a lot of those conversations, those interactions, the grandmother, the meeting with the other Americans, the white people, all of that really resonated with me. Yeah,
I felt it probably would.
Yeah, it really rang true to me. So it isn't so much that they're following the American dream, I don't think. It's just that they're trying to imagine and construct a better life than they left behind in the old country. Because, you have the father saying, life was very hard, right? Yeah. So I think it's really beautifully observed. I think I also... Well, while I was thinking, because it's very, very funny, and I found it very moving at the end as well, but what I observed watching it was how nice it was to see a story that isn't about grand things, that is kind of, just about ordinary people trying to make a life, so it's not planets colliding, it's not solving the great crime, it's not even a traumatic event in someone's life, like a rape or a murder, or, actually, the things that films tend to be about, and which shows what a narrow range American cinema in particular, but, others as well, have about, what stories they conceive of as exciting and dramatic and worth telling. Because, in many ways, this is kind of just a very simple story.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what matters here is, I suppose, the truth with which it's told, the style in which it's told, and the many observations that it kind of brings up that, an audience may connect with as relevant to their own life, So I thought that was, wonderful to see.
That, to me, is where the strength of the film is in how you can relate what you see to your own life, and you can recognise what you see in your own life. Actually, as the film became more dramatic, I started to get a little bit bored with it.
No.
Maybe ironically, because actually the more interesting stuff was when life was moving along. And as you say, not a lot was happening. They were integrating Grandma into the family. She's moved over from South Korea, and Grandma's trying to bond with David, the youngest, who's maybe 5 or 6 years old.
Yes.
That kind of stuff that's where the film's at its funniest. And it's where I felt it was, in some sense, the truest, I guess. Maybe that's because I could see myself in that more than in the rest of the film, perhaps.
I don't know. I also loved the bits where you were bored, where you say kind of you lost interest a bit. I really loved because, I think seen from an immigrant perspective, here's this poor man who's gone through so much, right? He's moved countries. Yeah, he's left everything behind, gone into a completely different world, has been working and saving, looking at chickens' asses his whole life, right? And then he's not even allowed to have one little dream, which is, to try out the farm. Yeah. So actually, I think, the stuff about the grandmother setting fire to the barn, is really necessary to have, that aspect of the story told. And also, I think a very, it's beautifully observed in those moments. Yeah, the tensions between the couple, the threats of leaving, but, what do you do if you leave? Is the family also robbing him of his one little dream? Yeah, and why is he made to choose between them? I mean, I think all of those issues are kind of, important and ones that resonate and true, and that it needs that last bit.
It does, I think, and it needs the characters to be tested.
Yes.
In that way, and their dreams to be tested, or their relationships to be tested. But I did find that just less interesting, maybe a little bit more conventional even, and that was less interesting to me.
Well, what I loved about those bits that it brought out and that I thought were interesting and significantly different were that it's not the whole house, they don't lose everything, it's just the barn. Right? And of course, it has the produce. And there's something very moving about a man risking his life, for a couple of aubergines and a butternut squash, right? Yeah. So you can see how important that is to him. I think it's also very important that allows the wife then to go and save his dream. Yeah, because, and then it kind of gives him the opportunity to choose her over the vegetables, right? Yeah. So I think kind of it fulfills all of those functions. And of course, it's the spark to the reconciliation of the grandmother and the grandson, yeah?
Yes, and the family comes back together at the end.
That's right.
It's funny, I was reading actually about the plant Minari, because apparently it comes back better and stronger in its second year. It dies and then comes back stronger. And I think you can see that, that's the end of the film, right? They've been through the ringer, they've moved to Arkansas, it's gone well, it's gone badly, they've lost the barn. Grandma's had a stroke, things have gone quite badly, but they're going to come back better right at the end when the Minari that Grandma planted is doing well, and that's the final scene of the film. There's this moment of hope in that, the Minari's doing well, it's coming back stronger, and so will the family.
I think one of the things that I really loved about the film is that the interactions with I don't want to say white people because I want to make it a broader immigrant thing. So, and of course, I'm white, so I never thought of kind of Canadians as white people when I was growing up, but they were more like I don't know, Canadians. Yeah.
And you can't call them Native Americans because it's not the same. But right. The Americans who are already there. Yeah.
Well, the established.
Right.
Yeah, kind of. Middle class, well-to-do, completely integrated people, whereas you're the foreigner who's jutted into all of this. So I like very much the way that this film depicts it.
Go on.
Well, first of all, they're not. I mean, there's a wariness, right? But they're not like the enemy, right? They're not like these evil monsters or people who mistreat them or whatever. And actually, one of the things that I really loved about the film, which is very different than maybe more cosmopolitan cinema, is the way that it makes allowances for difference, right? For eccentricities, for people not being like you, and nonetheless being kind, good people. So, for example, here the religious fanatic, right? I mean, it's not that his religiosity is shared, but it's just accepted, right? He is like that. And, kind of, the mother shares in it a bit. The father is like, keep that away from me, in relation to the religion. But the person himself is treated with dignity and respect. Whereas, in maybe more sophisticated films, those people are treated with real disdain.
Yeah.
So I really love that about this film.
And there are no, what I would have expected, racist confrontations.
No, there's a couple of.
Well, the film
doesn't ignore the
No.
potentiality of that, right? You get the little hints of it, but it's not the end of the world either.
So the interactions with white people of that nature are at worst kind of ignorant and embarrassing. So
Yes.
the thing with the kids,
Yes,
right? Where
that's what I was thinking of.
exactly. So the young girl meets this other young girl, white girl, and she starts making noises and says, "Stop me when I say something" in Korean. And she starts making noises which start off with the most racist.
Yeah.
So it's, ching chong.
Ching chong.
Literally starts with that, and eventually she hits upon two syllables that are a Korean word. So you're like, she's not being flat out racist, but it's a really ignorant way to have that interaction. But you can also see how that's just something that kids kind of do and think, and you would actually become friends with that person over time. It didn't start. It's not an antagonistic thing.
Yes.
It's ignorant.
Yes.
And that is kind of the worst that the film has with that. And actually, when you first meet Paul, who's the religious fanatic you mentioned, and he's being employed on the farm, he's been in the Korean War.
Yeah.
And he brings it up. And so I don't know enough about the Korean War to know whether I should have expected that to be a positive or negative thing, And it comes out as a positive thing. He likes Korea. He's got this old Korean money in his wallet. He likes the people have come there. Praise God for the arrival of the Lee family. I think it is.
Yes.
Lee family.
But it's a positive thing only because of the forbearance of the Lee family. I mean, he was at war killing Koreans. So even though I am assuming, that this family must be from South Korea, right? But nonetheless, it's interesting because, at the beginning of the film, all of those incidents raise tension, but the film doesn't go there. It chooses to go into a brighter path. So it's not that the film ignores the potentiality of all of those things. And certainly, I'm sure if you're growing up Korean in Arkansas, you will confront some kind of racism inevitably, right?
Well, it's possible. See, I was going to say the opposite, actually. It's possible that this is actually reflective of what it is to grow up as a kid and be protected from that kind of stuff by your parents.
That's very interesting because, you definitely, through most of it... No, actually, that's not true. Because one of the things I was remarking, and I was trying to think about how to talk about it, but the film has this very interesting shifts in point of view. Yeah, where, all of a sudden you're realizing, this is the kid's point of view on this. This is the kid seeing this, right? And then it's the grandmother, and then it's like kind of an objective, shot. And you do also move from the father and the mother's perspective and understanding on things. The only one who gets left out is really the sister.
Yeah, she doesn't get much of a look in.
Yeah. But actually, so these shifts in point of view where you feel you're sharing the perspective, it's not a literal... Well, sometimes it is literally a point of view, a child seeing something. But I mean more the film's point of view is sometimes aligned with the child, sometimes aligned with the parents, and so on. And I thought that was kind of, very elegant and seamless, because you do get a wider view through these shifting perspectives on the developing action.
But I think what I mean by this reflecting what it is to be a child growing up is the writer-director actually growing up at this time. His experience may have been very positive, actually free of these kind of confrontations, and so they don't make their way into his film.
I don't believe that. I mean, having been an immigrant kid myself and having had a very happy childhood, you have a happy childhood, but those kinds of racisms are thing you overcome. I mean, we used to get beaten up on the streets by gangs of kids just because we were foreigners. So, I mean, it might be difficult to do in Arkansas, but I'm sure you don't grow up in Arkansas without having some incident or other.
Yeah, sure. Still.
Yes, and I wasn't a visible minority in the way that he would have been. I mean, I do think that there is something about numbers.
Okay.
So I do feel that minorities only become a threat when they're a social formation or a large enough social formation. I mean, kind of, an individual family isn't necessarily seen as threatening. It's seen maybe as exotic and something worth knowing or whatever. When you have like 3,000 Koreans coming into your town, that might be a different issue, right? They are the only Koreans in this.
Yeah, well, you meet another few Koreans in the chick sexing.
I know, but
place but you don't see them.
She literally says there are 14 of us.
Yeah, and you don't see them again outside of that. So in wider society, they're present in the film.
Yeah. So
yeah, that's interesting. Although, mind you, I mean, I did see. I saw some phone video the other week of some black family in I don't know, I forget the states, one of the southern states that was being harassed by their white neighbours, and they were the only kind of black family there. Like, it's still,
yes,
it can still be very fucking nice, and actually maybe, and this is to draw a line between different racisms, but maybe it depends on the race sometimes, and some races are not seen as threatening as others.
Of course, there is that as well. But I think what I wanted to say is that it's not that these things are absent from the film. Yeah, there are little hints, but that's not where the film's focus is.
No, absolutely not.
And I loved it. I mean, it's full of observations. I mean, I thought, for example, it's so interesting that, when the grandmother moves in, she's made to share the bedroom with the boy, right? Which I thought was interesting because, for example, in my own case, it was with the girl, which makes more sense to me.
But in your case, was the girl younger? Is your sister younger than you?
Yes.
Right. Maybe it's the sharing with the youngest person.
Ah, that could be.
Because David's younger than his sister here.
Yeah, so that might be. But the other thing is that the boy is treated as a little prince and given the bed, and the grandmother is given the floor. My grandmother had a bed. But then when the grandmother gets ill, she takes over the bed, right? So it is like this taking over of the boy's space, yeah?
Yeah. And did you see the decision get made as to who was taking the bed in the first place? I don't remember. Did the grandma give it up to the kid?
I don't think it's something that you're told or that is discussed. You just see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the thing that's interesting about grandma is, and David says this at one point, you're not a real grandma, right? Yeah. And she is obviously literally genetically the grandma, but she doesn't act like it. No. Okay, so David says, grandmas aren't supposed to swear, they're not supposed to watch wrestling, they're not supposed to this, that and the other. It's all stuff that grandma does.
You're supposed to bake me cookies.
Exactly. Right? So she's this fun grandma that is actually wearing men's underwear, one of the things. She's not behaving like you would expect of a grandma, and maybe kind of giving up the bed to the younger son, because she loves the hell out of that kid. Yeah. And you see it every time you see him, and they have struggles kind of bonding. But to me, my assumption at least was, she's given the bed to the kid. She's like, I've slept in worse places than this. I'm having the floor.
Possibly, but we don't. I mean, that is not part of the story.
No.
What is part of the story is ideas of what a grandmother is and should be, and why this grandmother is great. Yeah. And the developing bond between the grandmother and the grandson, I thought all of that was just lovely. And the child is A, so beautiful, and B, so good, yeah?
Yeah,
and he's so well taken care of, right? The image of him, this young Korean kid, wearing those shorts and those cowboy boots. I mean, that is an image to remember, right? Yeah. And which makes so much sense. I mean, this young boy is going to grow up to be an American, right? So I just love that image. It's it's wonky and out of place, and and yet it kind of completely makes sense. I loved the performance by who's the actor?
Which actor?
Who played the father?
Stephen Young.
I mean, he was marvelous. Because he's so stoic and he's got a certain kind of elegance, actually. And he conveyed all the the silence, the repression, the kind of machismo really about wanting to have all of the family's problems on his shoulders alone. The way he stands rigidly, and you also see his love for his family and his children, but also a kind of an inner need or kind of a propulsion. I thought that that moment where he's worked so hard he can't lift his arms, and the wife washes his hair, and the way that the hair was falling, kind of just really powerful. I thought it was a beautiful performance, actually.
Yeah, good. That's good. He's very good. He was in Sorry to Bother You, in fact, which I was saying to you just before. I watched the other day again. He's the sort of one of the unionising agitators.
Okay, how interesting. Because, I see also that he's been in that, what's the zombie television show?
The Walking Dead.
The Walking Dead.
That's what he's best known for, I think.
Yeah, so obviously I have seen that. But he's never made an impression as strongly as in this film for me. The film is very smart about how it reveals things. So, for example, you don't know the names of the protagonists. It's Jacob and Monica. But actually the names are not revealed until almost near the end of the film. Yeah. So, you get the sense father, mother, Korean. You have components of their identity. Yeah, but they're not named until the end. And I thought that was both interesting and significant. Yeah.
And maybe that again comes from your childhood, mum and dad. You don't call them Jacob and Monica.
Yes. Yes. So I think it's a film that resonates because it's both very particular, but I think lots of different people will identify with the story that's being conveyed.
Yeah. Okay. I thought it was a bit bland, but
I didn't. I was really engaged with it throughout. I laughed throughout, and I was very moved at the end. And all of the scenes in the hospital and so on, worked for me. I mean, I would say that, visually it's not the most extraordinary film I've seen. I mean, the film in a way has almost no visual poetry, right? Pretty much everything is conveyed through characterization. Though, there is very good use of the camera and very significant use of the camera.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not just grabbed and left. The shots are framed with artistic intent.
Yes, and they're controlled. You can tell if the camera's moving in, it's always moving in for a reason, right? And or to convey a particular perspective on what you are seeing. So it's very good that way. But I think that could be better. And I did think that the conceptualization of the grandmother was a bit cliched.
Yeah.
Yeah. A card playing boys, girl grandma. The rascally grandma is a a cliche in culture. But I think this is better than most iterations of that trope. Yeah.
Mind you, what grandma isn't a cliche? If she had been baking cookies, that would also be a cliche.
Of course.
And if she'd been stern, that would have been a cliche. What grandma is original these days, Jose?
Well, maybe one played by a man. Turning tricks to support the family, I don't know.
One played by Nathan Lane, maybe.
Anyway, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I recommend it. It's good.
Yeah,
it didn't blow my hair off, but it's good.
I'd go further than that because, I think I haven't had as enjoyable a time watching a film for a while. Even though some of the films that I've seen, I would argue are better. Yeah, but the experience of viewing this was to me almost a joyous one.
Ah, that's nice. It was pleasant.
All right. So, from joyous to pleasant. Our verdict on Minari. So thank you very much for listening. We are eavesdropping at the movies and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud and YouTube. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies. And the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much for listening.
Bye-bye.